welcome to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents and scriptards and radio personalities and audio fiction podcasters and everybody else. Adamu. Nefas. I am flanneled out today.
Yeah.
Wearing my white flannel.
I'm all camo.
Camo.
We just look like a bunch of regular rednecks.
That's right. Just rednecks in a cube out in the woods doing a podcast about aliens.
Yeah. And earthquakes.
Yeah, so I'm really happy. I was kind of worried that we may not have a podcast or even a planet left. You know, it was like that undocumented meteorite that was going to come in, and destroy everything.
I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to do this because of the government shutdown.
Yeah,
and I was like, "Where's the internet going to go?"
Right. I mean, if they shut the government down, doesn't that mean like it turns off the sun?
Oh wait, they already got rid of net neutrality. We don't have any internet.
Damn you, private market. We already don't have internet. That's right. It's wild, wild west out there. People can charge whatever they want, and people can buy whatever they want. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So is there anything, we haven't done this in a while. Is there anything in the news, non-politics stuff? Like, is there any weird shit in the news? Didn't you have something you were talking about?
Yeah.
The quakes that aren't quakes, but there are quakes.
Yeah, there was a...
Skirp derp quakes.
There was a skirp derp earthquake just in the past few days. Well, it wasn't really an earthquake. It was just the ground shaking.
Yeah. Clearly that's not an earthquake.
Yeah, the skirp derps
ground
really
quake
just couldn't handle it. But no, there was a meteor or a meteorite, I don't know what.
A bolide.
Yeah, a bolide. Exploded in the atmosphere. It came in over Michigan or whatever. And I read it. I read the story the day it happened. And they were saying, like, the USGS guys came out saying that it caused, like, a magnitude 2.0,
yeah.
And I was like, holy shit. So I read a bunch of stories about it. And basically, it exploded in the sky. So they were saying there might be some fragments, little pieces that people might find laying around. But it was obvious that it was not, they weren't saying that it impacted and caused the tectonic plates to rub against each other. But that the explosion caused this magnitude 2 earthquake. And I was going to bring it up on the show, and like I was looking it up. And I see all these things like, it did not cause an earthquake. And it's just like every fucking story in the whole beginning of Google, like the Google search results, is just all these people skirp-tarding how it didn't cause an earthquake. It was an explosion that registered on seismographs. It was not an earthquake.
And seismographs measure
the ground shaking. I'm just like, Jesus.
Which is earth quaking.
Yeah, so they're like, it wasn't due to tectonic plates rubbing against each other, so therefore it's not an earthquake.
No one said that. Yeah.
And so then they came out and like corrected. They were like, well, correction, or I don't know, like, what? It wasn't an earthquake, but it registered on the seismographs, the Richter scale of 2.0.
Yeah. And
I'm just like, look, this to me is just fucking bullshit. Like, the reason why the story was impacting me the way it did, no pun intended,
I didn't even do
is because it's like right in the middle or right before all this government shutdown shit, when everybody's freaking out about that. It's like, and the global warming stuff, and we've been over all that.
Yeah.
It's like man is the greatest danger to the planet, blah, blah, blah. And then meanwhile, this fucking thing that nobody knew was coming.
Yeah.
Even though all of the fucking government was still running and looking for them. They didn't know it was coming.
NASA says that we found 90% of them.
Yeah. Right. So the 10% left that we haven't found is like
thousands
of times more than the 90% that we have found. And, we're doing okay.
Yeah. And they've been saying 90% for like the past 10 years. So I'm just like, you guys are clearly lying. It's bureaucratic bullshit.
But really, it was like this is before the shutdown and all of the stupid scare tactics. It was obvious that like when this happened, the thing that I thought of immediately was like this maybe this will kind of wake some people up.
Yeah.
To like, okay, maybe we're not the greatest danger to the planet right now. Us driving our SUVs and shit.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a thought, but that's what I think. I'm like, yeah, okay, we didn't see this thing. We've got all these freaking eyes looking into space trying to find them. This one rolled in and exploded and caused a 2.0 vibration in tectonic plates that is not an earthquake.
Yeah, 2.0 shaking on the Richter scale.
Yeah. Of
non-earthquaking shaking.
Right, of the ground.
Yeah. 2.0.
Which the ground consists of a tectonic plate.
Non-earthquake ground shaking.
Right. Non-tectonic plate rubbing against other tectonic plate, but tectonic plate moving, ground shaking, causing seismographs to shake and register as they would register a 2.0 earthquake if tectonic plates were moving and causing that.
Yeah.
Which really, it's like, okay.
Right. So the word earthquake means earth shaking, but they think the word earthquake means like deep tectonic movements. Okay.
Right. Well, that begs the question. Okay, maybe that's the wrong phrase, but still, the question is, they think an earthquake is caused by a fault line or something having to do with another tectonic plate and this tectonic plate, like two different tectonic plates.
Right.
What if? How do they know that every single time an earthquake happens, it's caused by two of them? I mean, technically, if one of them is fucking vibrating, then it's rubbing against the other ones.
Right. Yep. That's right.
Like, this is ridiculous. Like,
yeah.
So
I agree.
They're trying to say that the definition of an earthquake now is two tectonic plates rubbing against each other.
Right. Well, I mean,
it's
can it be like an upwelling of like magma material in the mantle that hits?
Right. Well, there was like some volcanic activity that was causing.
Oh yeah.
You know, quote unquote earthquakes, but are those not earthquakes because it's
they're
still
not
in the same tectonic?
That's right.
This is fucking stupid. But the anyway, that was really
so like,
annoying.
you're talking about like when magma injects into a magma chamber of a volcano. There's like a huge earthquake when that happens, and like that's a pretty good.
Yeah.
That's a pretty clear sign that the volcano is about to go off.
So we know.
But it's not an
Perhaps that the cause of that one is magma moving.
Yeah.
But other earthquakes we don't necessarily know the cause of, right? But it's assumed that these tectonic plates are shifting. Well, maybe there's something causing them to shift, and this goes back to like when I was originally starting to think about certain things that led to the whole Sinoverse idea. It was based on frequencies of vibration that resonate things in sizes. So the higher the frequency, the smaller in the shorter the wavelength. Mm-hmm. And the shorter the wavelength, the smaller the stuff that it will resonate, that has a harmonic resonance at that wavelength. So like an opera lady singing at a wine glass causes the wine glass to have a wine glass quake.
Right.
But the source of the wine glass quake is audio, is sound
voice.
Waves hitting the glass, right? Bouncing against the glass at a frequency that is the resonant frequency of the glass itself.
You're right.
So the glass can break. But it's like all
Galloping
the
Gertie,
little
right?
people on the glass that are worried about glass warming and shit, because they're going to warm up the glass and it's going to melt and everything.
Stop driving your SUV on this glass.
Yeah, the next thing they know, like the glass starts vibrating and they're like, no, it's not a glass vibration.
Yeah.
It's sound waves.
Right.
It's sound waves hitting the glass.
Yeah.
Okay, fucking A.
That's
It's
right.
fucking vibrating the glass.
Great point.
But
what all comes down to waves anyway.
right. So moving on, I was thinking, I started thinking about lower and lower pitches, deeper and deeper tones that have longer and longer wavelengths. And, when you get into like subsonic sound and seismic vibrations.
Schumann resonance.
Seismic vibrations are huge. They're very extremely lower than audible, like we can't hear them. Sound waves, basically. Or vibrations. It doesn't have to be sound waves. It can be, whatever. I don't want to get into the definition of that. No, like basically you get low enough in frequency then you can start resonating things like tectonic plates. So
Absolutely.
if there's some tone or some resonant frequency coming from anywhere that is high enough amplitude to start, and it matches in some way a harmonic or a cymatic portion of a tectonic plate, it can get that thing moving. And then if that thing moves and it's divided equally amongst the entire tectonic plate, the whole fucking plate starts moving.
Right, like a drum head. And it's floating on top of a gelatinous liquid or whatever, so it could bounce.
Right. So that to me, the tectonic plate vibrating is an earthquake. Like that's what I thought it was.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter what the source of the energy is, as long as it's transduced into the tectonic plate moving.
Right.
That's an earthquake.
I absolutely agree. I think what they were this is what I thought initially. I thought that what they were trying to say is like this bolide exploding in the air did not cause a tectonic shift. Like in other words, it didn't cause like this like a fault shift.
That's what I'm saying. Like they could have.
Instead, they said it wasn't an earthquake. It didn't cause an earthquake.
They're trying to say, no, it's not an earthquake because that means like fault lines are shifting on each other. Well,
no, it's not what it means.
Not necessarily what it means. Still, I would even argue that if there's something resonating a tectonic plate,
it'll make
somewhere,
fault lines move.
The fault line is going to be resonating too. Maybe not as much as the area where the major fluctuation was.
Right. So the fault lines won't be the source of the major. It won't be the epicenter.
That's what I was trying to point out earlier, is that they're trying to say that it has to be another tectonic plate pushing on this one to cause this one to move. That's the definition of an earthquake? Fuck no, it's not.
No, it's not. Yeah.
Anyway,
like there's sunquakes. Like when Earth gets hit by a major solar flare from the sun, like with the CME, with the coronal mass ejection, and that hits the magnetic, the magneto shield around the Earth, it goes bam, and it hits that, and like that reverberates all the way down to the surface, and it causes quakes.
Yeah.
They're like sunquakes, but you can see how the magnetic field would obviously transfer that energy. If it's getting hit by something, bam, then what's it being generated by? The ground.
Yeah. So. That idea initially led me to this other idea that is like, well, we don't really know. With some earthquakes, we know what the cause was. There's something something else going on that we can determine. Like this is a cause. Like there's subduction areas where it's obvious that one plate is sliding under the other one.
Right. Yeah. Brett's putting a bunch of stuff up there about subduction and.
Yeah. But on the ones where they're just they just show up out of nowhere, we don't know. But it doesn't even matter which ones. Observable or not.
Yeah.
The idea was that if you have a vibration of the right frequency and a high enough amplitude, and for a long enough duration, technically you could get, if it was hitting a tectonic plate somewhere, it could get it moving, right? And so it occurred to me that it's possible that some earthquakes are not, their cause is not terrestrial.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because we don't understand gravity either, right? But we do know that there are gravitational fluctuations and stuff.
Yeah.
So that there could be anomalies going on or phenomena that cause earthquakes that are coming from outer space, right?
I know that like planetary alignments in the solar system, where basically like you end up with like several large planets aligned up with Earth, and where Earth is in the line, we end up having more earthquakes and stuff like that during those periods. Because like obviously like there's a sort of a focus of gravity or something.
Right. And the moon, we've seen this with the moon too, where it's pulling.
Yeah.
It's pulling on the Earth and keeping it from being spherical. So yeah, these things have effects on the plate. Now, I don't know. It's just that whole fucking story brought me up to like all these other ideas.
What do you think about the Mohorovic discontinuity? That the place where the crust comes down and then it meets the mantle, and they thought that, like initially the theory was that it was going to be that it would sort of slowly change from solid to liquid. Instead, they found like a sharp shift. I think we kind of touched on this where you said, well, that's a phase change. Like there's a phase shift there or whatever. Like. the temperature rises and rises and rises, and like all of a sudden it's bam, all liquid after that. And you said it was like a crystalline phase shift or whatever. Didn't you say that? 'Cause I was talking about, I was like, what
Sounds
is it?
familiar.
Yeah.
Like it could be a phase change from liquid to solid, where right in this very, very small area, because of the pressure and the
Yeah, the
temperature
heat.
at that point, there's like. So, I was looking at phase changes of different materials and how they change based on temperature and pressure. Okay,
Yeah.
so there's if you graft, say the like we say that water boils at 212 degrees, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's at 1 atmosphere.
Right.
Okay, so if you increase the pressure, it boils at a much higher temperature.
Right.
Right.
Because you decrease it.
Right.
Well, yeah.
So if you look at temperature or pressure versus the phase change, like where the phase change is,
yeah.
and then you were to graph that, like let's say you take one of the variables is pressure,
Yeah.
and you have the increase of pressure, and then you're looking at the phase change of the boiling point.
Okay.
On the it's not a perfect line.
Right.
It curves.
The pressure goes
There's
up, but the boiling point may not follow it.
It doesn't follow it exactly,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's not exact. So, and then different materials.
He says it's called the triple point.
What's that?
He's talking about the. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So different.
I don't know what he's talking
different materials would each have different lines, like different.
Greetings.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You have to look at it like ratios. They're different ratios.
yeah.
So with I was thinking of like magma having, being all of these different materials and different
Right. It's minerals mostly.
minerals.
Right? Yeah, and metals.
and they all have these different phase change. These what would they be like? Where the phase change varies
Yeah.
based on pressure. Okay, I don't
Right.
know how to say that in a term. They all have different ones, different ratios.
Okay.
and so they're all mixed up together. And I was just imagining that it's possible that wherever that area is, based on the pressure and temperature in there, that the moving from a solid to a liquid is like right at this very specific layer of pressure and temperature.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So-
it's definitely interesting how sharply defined it is. Like they
Yeah.
actually call it a discontinuity.
Right.
Mohorovic discontinuity.
But that also may have something to do with resonance too, because
Right.
we know, like, okay, so if you are trying to freeze water, but you got a blender, and the
Yeah.
blender's going, and you're cooling it down,
yeah. It's gonna
Right.
it's gonna be harder. Yeah.
right? And you're not. It's still 1 atmosphere, right?
Yeah.
And you keep dropping the temperature, it's gonna keep going and keep going and keep going, and like parts of it'll crystallize over here where there's not as much motion,
Yeah.
and that causes that's nucleation, right?
Yeah.
There's these areas where the
But still,
The-
like moving water is just a lot harder.
I know, but
yeah.
the crystals have nucleated. They're now crystals.
Yeah.
And so those are every edge of every fucking crystal is a nucleation point for new molecules of water to come
right.
and
So
become.
as they run past it, they grab.
they
it.
might like one gets stuck in a corner and
Yeah.
stops for a moment, and bam, it becomes a crystal.
Oh,
But
got iced.
but down near the blender where it's all fucking agitating, it
Yeah.
can't freeze. So there's like, if you were to look at, like, if you shrunk yourself down and you're on this crystal, and you're like, I wonder if it just slowly blends to like,
No.
there's
Yeah.
like little ice crystals and then
Yeah,
there's
but-
water. No,
No.
there's like ice and then water.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So,
So-
there's always a sharp, like, because it's either one or the other, and it's not. There's nothing in between. There's no between. Like you're either a gas or a liquid, or a solid.
Right, but
There's
you
not
can-
kind of a
Right,
Jello.
but with liquids and solids, you can have like suspended solids
Yeah,
within,
colloidals.
right? Colloidal mixture, and so
Yeah.
I can see how the idea was that it's solid stone, and then it gets more and more molten, and
Molten,
parts of it
yeah.
are more molten, and there's chunks of rock and all this kind of shit, and then it becomes completely molten.
Right, but once you understand that, like, we have this like upper and lower mantle layer, and and those are flowing.
Right.
There's going to
and there's also a resonance. There's a strong resonant vibration constantly. So
12 hertz.
so in the liquid, there's going to be cymatic standing waves in there.
yeah, and also ones that bounce around, and like there's a theory that like that's what makes the outer core rotate, because you got the inner, like they think the inner core is solid, or it's some form of strange, very high density crystalline nickel
Yeah.
iron. But then around it, there's the outer core that is not quite as high density, but it's the same high temperature. So it's liquid, and it's actually caused to rotate around the core, the solid core, because of the mantle, which is moving around. Right, so the mantle is basically causing drag on the outer core and pulling it around. So you have like basically like hot metal moving around some stationary metal, and you get electromagnet.
Yeah.
The only thing that's weird is that like iron loses its magnetic properties at 600 degrees, but like I guess not at that high pressure. Maybe that high pressure is
I think it comes back.
Oh, okay. So after you reach some certain extreme,
I was looking into that too. I think that one of the things that the reason why I was getting stuck on that was we're looking at a chunk of iron up here at 1 atmosphere as well.
Yeah.
So like if you were to raise it to 600 degrees, but you were to put it under an extreme amount of pressure, it would remain crystallized. It would be the same thing. It's
right.
Like,
it wouldn't lose its It wouldn't lose its.
It wouldn't. The atoms wouldn't be able to like start jumping around because there's nowhere for them to go.
Yeah,
but
that makes sense.
There was something else.
I mean, the pressure down there is, jeez.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, millions of psi.
But with the magnetism, there was something I'll have to look it up. But maybe this wasn't for iron. It was something about the magnetism going away at certain temperatures and then coming back again at higher temperatures. I don't know.
There's also Brett says there's also a thing called the Gutenberg discontinuity, which is kind of the same thing between the mantle and the core. Okay, yeah. That was the other thing. There's the Mohorovic discontinuity between the crust and the mantle, and then when you go down all the way through the mantle and you get to the outer core, you have another discontinuity. So yes.
So I'm wondering too, like along with these, phase change properties and whatever, but
Gutenberg,
that there's something to do with resonance in the whole thing, like kind of like a centrifuge or whatever. When you get everything moving, like certain things move to different areas based on their mass.
Yeah.
But in the same way, like if you're vibrating something, you have the different density pieces moving at different rates.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting if the discontinuity, like the sharp discontinuity, had to do with a combination of those. Like,
I see. Yeah, that's cool.
The vibrations, or maybe I think there's multiple different frequencies of vibration of the Earth. Like there's the main one where they're like, oh yeah, it's vibrating at like 6.66666 hertz.
Yeah,
I don't remember what it is.
It's 12 hertz. Schumann resonance.
It's not 12. It's somewhere around 6 and 7, I think.
I thought it was 12, and
I did too.
Half of that was 6, but maybe I'm wrong.
I thought it was 12 too. But
if you think the Earth is flat, it's 12.
Yeah. I'm sure the official show observer will find that number for us.
Yeah. What's the Schumann resonance, show observer? Schumann.
We're probably both wrong.
UMNNA and then Schumann. Speaking of flat earthers, one of our listeners.
How do you have earthquakes?
Yeah. How do you have earthquakes, flat earthers?
I'm just kidding. It's easy.
I want to ask flat earthers, like, what about the other planets? Are they flat?
Yes, and all their discs are facing ours.
Right. Saturn is
no matter where you are on our disc.
Flat disc with a ring. Wait.
No matter where you are on our disc, all the other discs are facing directly at us.
Jupiter is a flat disc with a great storm on it that sometimes is not on it.
Even when you're around on the other side of our disc, all the other discs are still facing ours.
Yeah. That's checkmate, flat earthers. What about the other planets?
What about the sun?
You saw that picture that he sent where it's like irrefutable proof that water will not stay on a spinning ball. I'm like, they should try that with the sun. Irrefutable proof that nuclear plasma will not stay on a spinning ball. Burning flat earthers. Because you got that picture, they're spinning the ball and they're all getting hit by water. It's like, yeah.
What's that picture you sent me with the disc and it's got like the light is shining only on half of it?
Oh yeah.
It's like the dividing line of light and day is like perfect.
Yeah.
This perfect line.
Yeah.
How did they do that?
Yeah. You see the one that he sent where it's like the picture that NASA doesn't want you to see? It's the giant turtle with the flat earth on top.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And the flat earth on top has this perfect dividing line of light
day and night. Yeah.
On the middle of the flat disc.
Yeah.
How the fuck did you do that?
How did you do that? I was
There's like a mountain range in the middle too, and it's
Yeah.
the line goes right over it.
You see what the structure is holding the
Yeah, it's
thing on
elephants
the-
standing
yeah.
on a turtle's back.
Yeah, elephants on a turtle's back. Turtles all the way down.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. You're still not getting us Schumann resonance, damn it.
Yeah,
Or
come on.
resonance.
Come on, show observer.
Resonance.
Schumann resonance. 7.84.
But yeah, anyway, the next time some skirp tells you that something that measures on a seismograph on the Richter scale isn't the earthquaking, just tell them, just walk away.
Just be like, ugh. I don't know. I think words mean things, and it's important. Like earthquake means what it means.
It doesn't matter.
Shaking earth.
The bottom line is, it doesn't matter where the source of the vibration or the energy came from.
Right.
If it's shaking a tectonic plate, it's an earthquake.
Yeah.
And in order for a seismograph to move, the Earth has to shake. So
That's right.
the tectonic plate has to be moving. I mean, unless you just smack the needle or some shit, or kick the machine.
Have we? You know that this makes me think of the NOAA, what is it? The National Oceanography and something Administration.
Oh, here it is. Hold on.
Could have read my insanely articulate. Yeah. Where is it? So the problem, Brett, we have
7.83 hertz is the resonant frequency.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, I said that.
Ionosphere.
Yeah, that's not the Schumann resonance. Keep going. Up. There
Damn.
it is. There it is. That's pretty.
What?
I don't know. Like
We're trying to read what Brett is. Dan, dude.
yeah, he's posted a bunch
Read
of
a
stuff.
lot of shit that's great, but too much stuff.
A lot of it's responses to what we were saying. Sliding made possible by the resonant frequency, like yeah.
Anyway, Earth resonant frequency, I think, is
So have we ever gone through
Apparently
the anomalous sounds that have been recorded by the oceanography microphones and then the seismograph microphones that are all over the world, like the Bloop and Julia and stuff like that?
I don't think so.
Well, maybe we should do that on the next segment, because those are great. There's a whole list of them. You can play them.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, like anomalous sounds that have been recorded that nobody knows what they are. Some great ones. I think I talked about the Bloop. I was like, this could be like a big rock that comes from space and splashing in the Pacific in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, it's the Bloop. Yeah, but there are other ones that are very strange. Like there's one that's like a moaning sound, and then there's one that's like.
I think I read a story that like 2017 was like one of the craziest for like atmospheric sounds.
Yes,
like crazy
it was.
noises in the sky.
Yeah, I was watching a whole compilation of them last night of all the trumpets really get me, because I'm just like, I hear that and I'm just like, God, it sounds like fake. It sounds fake. It's like
Think about all the stuff in all the scripture, like in the Bible and stuff,
Yeah, I
where they're
know.
talking about trumpets blaring
Yeah.
from the sky and all this kind of stuff. You know?
So of course these sounds are making Christians going like, oh my God, Whereas like the Vikings are all like, yes, Ragnarok, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm pointing that out, meaning that like people in ancient times also recorded it, so it's not.
Yes.
They wrote about hearing these loud trumpet noises from the sky and shit like that.
Schumann resonances are the principal background in the part of the electromagnetic spectrum from 3 hertz through 60 hertz, and they appear at distinct peaks, extremely low frequencies, around 7.83 hertz. And then he's got a bunch of
Okay, so there's a few different ones. So 7.83, 14.3, 20.8, 27.3, 33.8.
None of them are 12.
So
I was totally wrong.
yeah, I was pretty sure that it was somewhere around 6 or 7,
Yeah.
whatever. But it's closer to 8. God damn it.
33.
Wrong. Yeah. So
Are those harmonics?
that's what I was. I don't know if they're harmonics of each other, but what I was thinking of when you were talking about the mantle and the whatever's under that, the core.
Yeah.
The these different layers and different discontinuities or whatever are vibrating at different frequencies.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah. So
the bigger ones would be lower. The higher ones would be, or the smaller ones would be higher.
Right.
So like the core would, if the core, the discontinuity somewhere at the core, that chunk, is not going to vibrate at the same frequency. Its fundamental frequency of vibration is not going to be the same as the mantle.
Yeah.
The mantle's fundamental is not going to be the same as the crust or whatever.
Right.
And so the idea that
Greetings.
is that all it is? Just those three, or there's? I thought there were.
Well, yeah, the three. You got the crust, the mantle, and then the core. But each one, the mantle separated into upper and lower.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
the core is separated into outer and inner.
Yeah. Okay. So all of those pieces, whatever the discontinuities are, that we're able to detect them. So think of it like the only reason we know that shit is because we put
Something's bouncing.
something on the ground.
Yeah.
And then made a loud bang or some shit, and we're measuring, or
Like when other earthquakes happen, the waves from those earthquakes bounce through. And we can see them,
yes. So we're hearing really, or we're detecting
Echoes.
with microphones, or looking at it with an eye per se.
Yeah. We're looking at it with an ear.
Yeah, looking at it with an ear, basically. We're picking up these vibrations, and so when something on the surface vibrates, it kind of, like, based on the echoes, kind of like a radar, we can tell the density, whatever, these
By
different
how
layers.
Yeah, because the waves have to pass through the material, and that will be the speed of that will be based on the density of the material. And then, like, once the density of the material changes, some of the wave will bounce off of that change
Right. Because
and come
it's
back.
not harmonically
Right.
in tune with
That's
it.
right, yeah.
So it's just like seeing with your eyes. Like when you see a color, it's because the light this vibration that's going towards that thing, some of it is absorbed and some of it's bounced back, and that tells you that it's a color, whatever color that you see. When really it's like that's just giving you some information about the thing.
Yeah.
And you can analyze it, and since we know that colors are divided into different frequency ranges,
Yeah.
you can tell something about the atomic makeup of that thing that you're seeing.
Spectrography.
Right. So we're doing the same thing with the Earth, and so that proves the point that these things, these different portions of the Earth, the inner core of the Earth, their fundamental frequency of vibration, their general makeup, vibrates at a different frequency.
Yeah.
So you would have, in every different one, you would have a different resonant frequency coming out.
I mean, this even happens in the ocean. Like there are thermoclines in the ocean where basically you have like these crazy layers where all of a sudden the water changes from being nice and warm and toasty to being freezing cold, and it's like an extremely sharp demarcation, like a discontinuity, and like
when you're cruising along with a fish finder, you're like, holy shit, oh, never mind.
yeah, that's right. Wow, he just went over a hole that was 1,000 feet. Wait, yeah. Yep, because the radar will bounce off that. And so, like, submarines would, when they were doing all this stuff with the Cold War or whatever, these submarines would go and, like, hide behind these thermoclines. Like, you just go beneath it and they just disappear.
Yeah.
Because it
So
looks
it's
like anything above it, that looks like the floor of the ocean.
Yeah, it's like when you have, like, a big fire going or whatever, and then somebody's on the other side of the fire and they're trying to talk to you.
Oh, yeah.
And the wind is blowing. Yeah, the wind is blowing and it's moving the flames in the way of the sound waves coming at you. It just fucks them all
The
up.
sound waves get thrown up into the air, yeah.
And it's mainly the high frequency sound waves, right? The smaller ones.
I remember
wavelength.
when we were working out there burning on that property, you would drive the machine behind a fire, and I would hear
Yep. Almost goes away. Yeah.
yeah, it just almost disappears. The machines are loud, and that fire would be gone.
Submarine operators, they knew what they were doing.
Yep.
All right, we got to take a snake break.
That's right.
Time is up, snakes.
We're trying this new timer thing out because we're so terrible about that.
I forgot to start it, of course.
Of course. You didn't even start.
So I started looking at this original timer. Anyway, we'll try it again next time.
Yeah, basically this timer, when it gets to a certain amount, like it pops this giant window that says, time's up, snakes. So that didn't happen, but we're saying it. Time's up, snakes. But
Snakes.
Snakes.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Snakes. Hailing from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, we're talking about Scarptards again. And fucking up a stupid story, which actually was a really cool story about a bolide.
Yeah.
An exploding meteor causing an earthquake.
Yeah.
And they're just mad because basically what I was trying to get to real quick is that this all happened before the government shutdown.
Right.
And then the government shutdown happens.
Yeah.
And then we get these news stories where it's like, oh my God, what about
we might get hit by an undocumented meteor.
Yeah. And I was like, well, those meteors need a path out of the shadows.
Yeah.
You know,
or there needs to be a wall to stop them from getting here.
But anyway, the point was, is, like, I was thinking, those news stories obviously come on the tail of this other occurrence, which now is being skirp-derped.
Right.
Into where that's not a big deal, of course, right? Because I was thinking, dude, this ought to wake some people up, you know?
Yeah.
No, that's not a big deal. It's not a real earthquake. And then, oh my God, the government's shut down. What if we didn't see it? Well, you didn't see that one.
Right. When the government was
wasn't
on.
shut down.
The government was turned on and you didn't see that one. Now it's turned off and you're like, oh my God, I might not see one. But that one that you didn't see, you're like, no big deal. It's not a big deal. It's not a problem. But right now, oh my God, we might get hit by one that we can't see. Like, don't they know that almost all near-Earth objects that are a danger to the Earth are found by amateurs? Not NASA government doesn't find them. They put them in their register, like in the catalog, but they're found by amateurs.
Don't you know that they don't know that?
I should know that. I should totally know that.
It's the point is that they probably do know all that.
Yeah.
And they're just using it. You know.
Well, yeah. I'm talking about the...
Yeah, I know.
You know, the people are like, it's not an earthquake.
Yeah, you're right.
That reminds me, though. Do you think I should... I read to you that series of comments where that dude just, like, really hates on me, though.
Yeah.
Do you think we should go through that?
Yeah, I was going to say you should bring that up.
Yeah, because that was pretty intense. It's definitely one of the more intense...
And you were talking about some other Wikipedia shit.
Oh, yeah. So a couple of weeks ago, I wrote a post on Reddit. I think I talked about this in one of the shows, but I posted on Reddit about paradoxical undressing. Because, okay, so there's a subreddit on Reddit. There's a missing 411 subreddit, and they talk about, you know, basically we talk about the newest cases and what's happening, and people put theories in there. And I see all the time in there that people are, you know, like, well, that's paradoxical undressing and blah, 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 and they move on. And I'm just like, no, it's not. So I finally made a post where I just kind of outlined it very specifically. Like, this is what happens. This is how it works. This is why this is not what we're seeing here. And almost everybody that responded was very positive, but this one guy was really mad for some reason. I mean, like, he was really mad. Let's see.
Yeah, but okay. So when you were posting your original post, you were describing
like a generic way it works. Yeah.
But you were describing the generic way that the paradoxical undressing works, right? But in contrast to the cases in 411 where those things don't apply.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the post is basically like, it's called Paradoxical Undressing, what it actually is and how it actually works. And then I basically say, so this is, the paradoxical undressing is thrown out there all the time as an explanation in all these 411 cases where they find a bunch of clothes strewn through the woods but no body. Or they find a body with no clothes or no shoe, you know, like, and then paradoxical undressing is given as the explanation. I'm like, is that legitimate? And then I said, okay, so let's look at the phenomena of paradoxical undressing itself. And I went through the whole, the basic medical stuff, you know, that like this is how it works. You got hypothermia, and then as hypothermia increases, there are various things that the body does, the hypothalamus does, to sort of mitigate heat loss and to generate heat, you know, shivering and mitigating heat loss. Like it stops making sweat, it like gives you goosebumps, right?
Yeah.
So I went through all of that, and one of the last, most drastic things that it does is called vasoconstriction, which is where it starts to close off, not entirely, but it starts to, you know, squeeze down on arteries going to extremities.
Yeah.
And that starts with your fingertips and your toe tips, but as the temperature continues to drop, it extends through your fingers, and eventually it means your entire arms and your legs.
And it's the main focus is to keep your core.
Right, the torso. It's like, it amounts to like sacrificing both arms and both legs to keep the torso with all of its vital organs at temperature.
Right.
Okay. So once it's gotten to that point, if the body temperature continues to drop, at some point, the hypothalamus gives up. It just stops trying.
Which means you get a rush of blood to all your
Hot blood.
extremities.
Yeah. So your arms, so you get hot blood rushing through your arms and legs or whatever, and that can cause a sensation, especially at this point where the person's core temp is like drastically lower than it should be, which means that they're not in their right mind. So like just like a fever where you get a much higher temperature and you kind of go crazy and you have hallucinations and shit's weird. The same thing is anytime your temperature is off from what it should be, like chemical stuff doesn't work right, and so.
But it causes a burning or
so it causes a burning sensation.
It's just like if your hands are really fucking cold and you come inside and you go to wash hot warm water, you're like
right, and it also
it's like water that would be normally not bothersome to you
right,
whatsoever.
and you can mix in a little bit of the when it goes numb and then you stand up pins and needles because there's some of that too because it obviously was going numb. So
you get this extremely uncomfortable feeling.
You get this hot burning tingling sensation and you're also kind of out of your mind because so sometimes they'll start stripping off clothes. They're like, oh my God, I'm hot, right? And they start pulling off. But the first thing they'll pull off, obviously, is gloves and a coat, maybe a scarf, a hat, possibly, right? They don't usually make it any farther than that. And it's like no one's stripping off their boots. You don't think, wow, I'm hot. I need to
they're hiking in their
need to
snow.
take off my shoes. I'm kind of hot. I need to take off my shoes.
Now, maybe if they were really hallucinating and they just lost all realization that they were in the mountains in the snow because they're just fucking out of their mind, they're like just completely stripped.
I'm really hot
or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Like, I'm going to
imagine
bed.
that everyone has. The hallucinations are different, right?
Yeah.
People have different fever type hallucinations, but the thing is that they're also. You have to realize that this doesn't happen until the body has basically given up trying to keep itself
so they
alive.
usually don't even make it to fully undressing before they die.
Right. They fall down at some point, and then once they've fallen down at this point, they're not getting back up. They're dead. Like the body has already.
Try taking your jacket off while you're laying in the snow.
Right. Try taking your jacket off when you're smashed, drunk, super hammered drunk, and now you're walking through 3 foot deep snow, and then try removing your jacket.
Wait, don't try that.
I mean, don't actually try it because you'll die. But
anyway, that was the gist of his post.
yeah.
I had to get that when you first told it. That's why I wanted to go through it.
Okay, yeah. At the end of the post, I basically say, okay. So basically, paradoxical undressing does not occur until after the body has given up trying to save itself from freezing to death. When the person is only moments from death and with mobility severely hampered, it is mostly just outer coats that are shed with the odd glove here and there, and possibly even a scarf or hat. And is followed almost immediately by terminal burrowing, which we talked about that too.
Yeah.
So after they've fallen down, they kind of try to wiggle themselves down underneath the snow or whatever. If they're not in snow,
It's warm down here.
yeah. I mean, I'm a worm and it's warm.
I feel bad making fun of this. It's terrible.
Terminal burrowing. I mean, it sounds funny, but yeah, end burrow.
It's really not fun.
Yeah. So it's followed paradoxical undressing basically, if it happens, is followed almost immediately by terminal burrowing and then death. Okay, this means that in real cases of paradoxical undressing, the items of shed clothing are found in the immediate vicinity of the body
Yeah.
because they don't go very far.
Unless they had a sandwich in a pocket. Then usually that's not found. Or it's found very far away from the body, and usually it's torn near the sandwich. Russ. Should have put that in there.
Could be true. I was just talking about.
But
in
usually that's
general.
accompanied by tracks.
That's right. Someone stole my fucking sandwich. So I ended it with, I'm sure I don't have to explain to you all that this does not match what we see in the 401 cases. I'm tired of seeing this thrown around as an explanation, which is why I wrote this post. I'm perfectly aware this won't stop the chronic dismissers from hand-waving trails of shed gear and clothing as paradoxical undressing, but maybe it will provide some of you with the ammunition to shoot them down. Okay, so I got lots of great comments on this. And then I got one that was not a great comment, but it was only one. But this guy says, people who have succumbed to the cold while climbing Mount Everest have been found with some of their clothing folded and laying at their feet. Hell, hunters who find clothing in the woods often fold it neatly and put it on a rock or a log so that it can be found by someone if they return looking for it. There are eyewitnesses of accounts of climbers on Everest starting to remove their clothes even though death was not just a few minutes away. Interestingly, Paulides has claimed that this does not even occur on Everest, something that can be proven wrong with a brief Google search. There are a wide range of factors that can result in a wide range of behaviors among people in cold environments. The info above is trying to apply a one-size-fits-all model to a complex phenomenon. I would suggest reading some of the published scientific research on paradoxical undressing rather than relying on Wikipedia, which I didn't. Also a good idea to talk to search and rescue people who have years of experience dealing directly with multiple cases of this rather than relying on second or third hand information, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I said, I know about the bodies on Everest. Some of them have nicknames based on the aspects of their clothes, like green boots. And of course, there's Rainbow Valley just below the summit, strewn with corpses in brightly colored cold weather gear. I have not heard or read anywhere that any of the 200 plus Everest corpses have shed any of their clothing, or that clothing has been found on the mountain folded or not. There's discarded gear like empty oxygen bottles, but that's normal. As for hunters finding discarded clothing in the woods and folding it and putting it where it can be seen, so what? What matters is how those clothes got out there, not whether a hunter found them and folded them. I have seen pictures taken by an elk hunter of a shirt, pants, socks, and shoes laid out on the ground as if the person wearing them had laid down flat on their back and then disappeared, leaving the clothes behind. Nearby was an old wallet with various bits of paper scattered around it, remnants of photos, business cards, and cash. All had clearly been out there in the woods for years. Another picture by an elk hunter of a big tree stump covered in and surrounded by what looked like hundreds of pairs of shoes of every kind, size, and style. Hand wave all you want. What?
Creepy.
Yeah. Hand wave all you want. Make up stories to tell yourself if you want to, but it doesn't matter. There are clearly defined physiological reasons for paradoxical undressing that make it untenable as an explanation for what is seen in the 411 cases. So then he says, if you're ignorant of examples of paradoxical undressing on Everest, then I would suggest a bit more background reading if you want to have a chance of being taken seriously. Not just in terms of Everest, but in everything. Google, especially Google Scholar, is your friend. Check it out, or not, and continue on the path that leads you to conclude that the underground humanoid lizard people took the shoes off those people because they were afraid of the germs on them. I said, underground humanoid lizard people. I've been talking about the medical science behind paradoxical undressing. The only one bringing up lizard people is you. You'll just have to accept that I do not give a flying fuck if people like you take me seriously or not. So then this is the post where he just really unloads it. He's like, so let me guess. If it's not lizard people, it's eventually going to be UFOs or time portals that suck people into these quick freeze parallel dimensions. I don't give a damn about you either, since you're ignorant of paradoxical undressing on Everest. And are obviously too lazy or stupid to actually look into it. Let me repeat, Wikipedia is not the ultimate source on medical science or any other topic. That's why high school students get dinged at school for using Wikipedia as a source on term papers. As an adult, not sure that you are one, you start to lose credibility the instant you even mention Wikipedia. Just trying to help others who read to read this to avoid falling down your rabbit hole. In fact, anyone reading this who has an IQ above room temperature and is actually interested in an objective discussion on the topic, just drop me a private message and I can set you up with some readings. In an ideal world, I could just post it here, but I now realize that everything I post here, even if it was written by the dean of the Harvard Medical School, is just going to stoke this tart up more, and I don't have the time or inclination to waste time trying to fix this particular brand of stupid.
Oh my god.
So I was like, come on, man, tell me how you really feel. He never responded to that. I was just like, I'm sure this is pointless, but I'll try anyway. I don't know what's happening. I haven't got the slightest clue. Aliens, Sasquatch, reptilians, Lemurians, etc. aren't answers because I don't know what any of those things are either, or even if any of those things are actually a thing. You said, let me guess. As if anyone could stop you. Why would you ask for the truth when your guesses are so supportive of your preconceived ideas? One thing is for sure, you have definitely proved that you can kick some serious strawman ass. And you are definitely smarter than those strawmen too. They're so fucking dumb. Have fun with that. But yeah, that's probably one of the most scathing responses I've ever gotten. That dude was harsh. It was funny though, because he wasn't really talking to me.
But he's like, because you don't know about the Mount Everest paradoxical undressing.
Yeah,
I don't even care about you.
I don't even care about you. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, I didn't know about that either. So
what?
He doesn't care about me either.
Well, I still don't know about it because despite what he said.
Oh, but that's really easy to find on Google.
Yeah, I know. Google Scholar is your friend.
Yeah. It's your friend.
The reason he kept going off about Wikipedia is because up somewhere in the thread, somebody said, well, what's your source on this? And I said, the basic information you can find on Wikipedia. Wikipedia has further sources that are really great. I also talked to a friend who was an EMT, and, I found others, so, he's like, oh my God, Wikipedia, Yeah. And I'm like, that's not the main source, but whatever. It doesn't matter. there are like 4 or 5 different people in the thread themselves that are like, I am an EMT, can't confirm, doctor can't confirm, you know, so it doesn't matter. But this is the point, like, that dude was talking about Everest. I wasn't talking about Everest. What happens on Everest doesn't matter because those aren't 411 cases.
Yeah.
We kind of went through this, right? Like, he was trying to distract me. You know, like whatever he was saying about Everest, it doesn't matter to me whether he's right and those things happen there or not. It doesn't matter because what I'm saying is here's the physiological thing that takes place. It's so far away from what we see in the 411 cases that it doesn't apply at all. It doesn't matter what happens on Everest.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's worth comparing it to try to narrow down what did happen, but it doesn't appear to be what happened.
Right. Well, I have done lots of research on Everest because I know that Everest is covered in bodies. So I've gone and done a lot of research on them, like what are their names, what are the circumstances of their death. I've never seen any of them without clothes. I mean, they're all wearing all their gear. I don't know what he's talking about.
There's the area though that has like all the clothes.
Yeah, called Rainbow Valley.
Yeah,
but their bodies
are down there. Yeah.
Yeah, the bodies are in the clothes. Like, there was one story I found of paradoxical undressing where the person actually stripped almost completely naked. At least that's what the story claimed. But basically, it was like the guy, his car ran out of gas or something like that, and or it got stuck. I don't know. But he basically got out and he went to walk to the nearest gas station or whatever to help his family. His like wife and kid were in the car. Okay. So he got out and walked through this incredible cold, and they found him a couple of days later, like frozen to death in his underwear, curled up on the ground, and his like all of his clothes were like only feet from him. Okay. So that's basically what I was trying to say. Is like what I'm saying is that if it's real paradoxical undressing, the corpse will be close to the clothes because
unless there was a sandwich.
Right. Like they may have taken there's a sandwich. They may have taken their clothes off for some other reason, but it isn't paradoxical undressing unless they're already almost dead.
Yeah, so Brett's saying they would have like 20 to 90 seconds max before death, 15 to 30 before they pass out.
Right. Okay, yeah, he's got a bunch of stuff on here.
Yeah.
He says it is a one-size-fits-all thing. Low blood perfusion to the organs is called shock. Terminal hypothermia is the result of decompensated distributive shock. The body gives up and the pressure drops drastically. They literally would lose pressure to the brain and pass out, then die. It's like standing up too fast, dizzy, lightheaded, pass out feelings because of a sudden change in orientation which drops pressure. This is way worse. It would be like water pressure if the piping and the plumbing were increased by 2.5 times at all times. And once the whole leak, wait, what? At once?
The whole, anyway,
yeah.
Shitty plumbing analogy.
Terrible plumbing analogy, yeah. So, yeah, and like he also had told me when I was talking to Brett about this before, he said like once the temperature range gets a little bit out of whack, all these chemical reactions that are supposed to happen and they need to happen in like exact succession for things to work correctly, they stop working, and then you have catastrophic failures. Like you have these huge strings of catastrophic failures where this particular chemical reaction doesn't happen, and that means all these other things can't happen, and like that starts to compound, and you die. So,
so in the cases where all of their clothes are folded up nicely, and the body's nowhere nearby,
it's not paradoxical undressing. Yeah, because they have moments to live at that point.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen on Everest. What I'm saying is like if the body isn't near the clothes, it wasn't paradoxical undressing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I don't know what this guy was. That's why I posted it. I'm trying to say like, dude, it doesn't matter what happens on Everest. If they're not near the clothes, then they took their clothes off for some other reason. It just wasn't paradoxical undressing is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So.
Because there's not enough time.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you were able to get all of your clothes off, you'd be right nearby.
Right. And there's going to be a clearly marked trail through the snow where you're like, and then you burrow or whatever. So you just gotta love skirtards, man.
But really, like if you're in like serious cold weather gear, it's hard to take off your clothes.
Right. It's kind
especially
of like your Velcro strapped and buttoned and yeah.
Like in order to take off your boots, you really got to sit down. You know?
Right. And once you sit down, that's it.
Right. And you sit down, and you start taking off your boots, and you're bundled up in all this stuff, so it's already hard to like get down there.
Yeah.
Take off your boots, and your hands are cold.
Right.
So you got to take off your gloves, take off your boots.
Yep.
And you're trying to untie knots and shit, and it's like, fucking, you're dead.
Yeah.
So yeah, he took off his gloves. And
Right.
His laces are undone on one boot.
Yeah. Yeah. Or he's got like one arm out of the jacket. Right. And then he was still trying to walk, and he didn't have enough coordination to do that because he's all high, he's feverish, so he falls. Right.
Yeah.
And then he's laying on the ground, and he's like, oh, gotta get this jacket off.
But I mean, you can't take your fucking pants off without taking your boots off. That's what I'm getting at.
Right.
So if it's paradoxical undressing, like you were talking about, and
Yeah.
you're at that point where your body is just given up trying to keep you warm, and
Yeah.
all of your extremities are practically numb, you're probably not walking
Right. Yeah.
already.
Right. So
You might be, but
Yeah.
but the idea that you would then take your gloves off and sit down and take your boots off and then get your pants off.
well, and I was putting this out to people too. Like, I've been out in the cold where I'm like, man, I kind of got overheated, so I take off my outer coat, right? I don't throw it away.
You unzip it, yeah.
I don't throw it away because I'm not retarded, and I know that like I'm gonna cool off and I'm gonna need it again. So if you're like shedding clothing and dropping things, there's more going on than you're just hot.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so the whole paradoxical undressing thing is like, yeah, so they get hot, and I'm like, so they throw all their clothes away.
Yeah.
No one does that. Like, people, you know, I've gone snowboarding where you're like, it's freezing, but then you get hot. So you might take off your outer coat or whatever to cool down a little bit, but I
Yeah.
don't throw it away because I'm not an idiot.
Yeah.
So if they're throwing it away, it isn't just because they got hot, right?
Yeah,
they're
some
out of their
mental
mind.
shit
Yeah,
going on, yeah.
They're addled. They dumb. So
Damn, yeah.
yeah. So the other one I was talking about, the more Skurpderv stuff, is the Wikipedia page for Friedrich Valentich. That is the Australian guy.
Yeah, find the mic there, buddy.
The Australian guy whose plane disappeared. He was flying to King's Cross, like he was kind of going over a stretch of ocean to pick up some friends from an island, and he calls Melbourne air traffic control to ask if there's any traffic at his altitude, and they're like, no, there's no traffic at your altitude. What are you seeing? And he starts telling them that he's seeing this object with a bunch of lights that seems to be toying with him. He thought, it's like flying really close, then flying far away or whatever, and it's freaking him out. And they keep telling him, we don't see anything on the radar, we don't see anything in your area, but they kept asking him questions about it. Anyway, at some point, they hear some really strange things over the radio, and the last thing he's heard saying is he says, Melbourne, it's still above me, and it's not an aircraft, is what he said. The last thing he says, it's not an aircraft. And then there's like 17 seconds of really strange metallic noises, like it sounds like a bunch of metal things are failing and bending. It's like this horrible rattle or whatever. So there's 17 seconds of an open mic of all these horrible noises or whatever, and he's never found, no trace of him or his plane has ever been found. So
shit.
it's a very strange disappearance. It's called the Friedrich Valentich disappearance.
When was that?
1978. Year I was born.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he wasn't like a super badass, like really experienced pilot. He only had 150 hours. But 150 hours is you only need 30 to get your license. Okay.
Yeah.
So like you're not considered extremely experienced, but you're competent, right? At that point, he had a Class 4 instrument license, which meant he could. The Cessna he was flying, he was like licensed to use that, and then he was tested in all the instruments that it had. So he was supposed to be able to fly that plane without fucking crashing it into the ground or flying it into the ocean like a dumbass because he didn't know what he was doing. So, like, in other words, he wasn't a total rookie. This wasn't like rookie move. Hate to see it happen.
Yeah.
And the Melbourne air traffic controller people were really freaked out by the conversation. They were not under the impression that he was joking, hoaxing, making anything up.
But they were picking him up on the radar, right? Like,
yeah, they had him on radar. They knew where he was. Yeah,
and then he just disappeared.
yeah, yep,
No more blip.
right. And there's a couple of stories like I've got a few of those in the Bermuda Triangle stuff where they send a plane out to intercept some unknown flying object, not necessarily a saucer or whatever. They're just like, there's something on the radar that they don't know what it is. They send an intercept plane, a fighter jet out there, and they're watching them on the radar screen, and the fighter jet's like beep, beep, getting closer and closer, and then they seem to merge, and then they just disappear, and then nobody ever finds anything. That one happened over that one happened over one of the Great Lakes. It was an F-20. I don't know the number of the fighter, but it was a 2-person.
That's not a Bermuda Triangle then.
No, it's not a Bermuda Triangle one, but there are ones in the Bermuda Triangle that happens where the radar.
I thought you were saying you got it from the.
Yeah, I did read that story in the book, but he was just referencing it as a,
Gotcha.
like where basically we have these radar signatures merge, and then it just vanishes off the scope.
Yeah.
Both signatures just disappear. And which, like, if there was a wreck, that's not what would happen.
Right.
You would see a bunch of signatures would appear, because then you've got pieces of metal falling, so the radar would be picking that up. There was also, anyway, so the Wikipedia page for the Friedrich Valentich disappearance has been completely, I can't say destroyed. It's just been like
Overrun.
Yeah. Scriptards came in there and just like laid waste to it. Like, I saw some of the historical pages of it where, what it was like in 2012 or 2010 or whatever, and it was really good. Very long, everything was cited, had information from both sides. Like, Scriptards think it's like he was flying upside down, and the thing he thought was a UFO was actually Venus and Mars and Jupiter. Typical Scriptar stuff. Like, he was flying upside down, so he flew into the ocean, and he didn't know it, and he was spiraling, and so the thing that he thought was spinning above him was really just Mars and Jupiter and Venus, and they were going around because he was spiraling down into the ocean. And he was a UFO enthusiast, so that totally discredits anything he has to say about anything ever, especially about UFOs. I mean, that's one of the first things you see in the latest article. It starts out, it's like, Friedrich Valentich disappeared, blah, blah, blah. As a known UFO enthusiast, he crashed into the ocean, blah, 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 whatever. So you're like, why did you put that in the very beginning? Time is up, snakes. Time is up, snakes. That worked really good. Because I completely was not paying attention to the time. And I saw that, though.
Your big old sign.
Your time is up, snakes. I'm going to take a picture of that, put it in the show notes. All right. So when we come back, we'll do some Bermuda Triangle stuff. Yeah.
Script cards.
Yeah. Tired of talking about script cards.
Let's talk about script snakes.
Yeah. With half our pyramids tied behind our backs just to make it square. This is Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you in the second hour, third segment of the show. This is show number 32.
Yeah.
That's right, 32. Next show is going to be 33.
Oh, shit.
There's going to be some crazy shit on that show.
It's going to be a secret show.
Secret show. So I wanted to, we were looking at these anomalous sounds, but maybe we'll get to that on the next show.
Yeah, I'd like to be able.
That would take some queuing up. Yeah,
I'd like to be able to get some of the audio, and
yeah,
it's pretty late.
Yeah, it is pretty late.
We could prep
late.
that and do it next time.
Yeah. Also, there's the audio of that of the plane, like the audio of the conversation. Not Friedrich Valentich, but there was another one. I showed it to you. I asked you if you could clean it up some, but it was like, it's real staticky.
Yeah.
But they're basically like, well, they don't know where they are and they don't know what's going on, and then they disappear. Something is in their way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we could play that too. Oh yeah, that reminds me. There was some weird information about that. Like, we played the audio from the quote unquote Pentagon, fighter jets chasing the UFO video, and I haven't looked into this yet, but there was some question as to whether that was authentic. That, there was there was rumors that somebody found those same videos on a server from Germany, I think, like in 2007. So I don't know. I'll have to look into that to find out if there's more behind that than what I thought.
Yeah.
So, like, I thought that it was legit because of I know the researcher who supposedly did the FOIA, but I didn't really dig into it. So maybe there's more there than meets the eye. So I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, well,
That's
you
what
always
happens.
know you might be wrong.
That's right.
You know?
Well, that's what happens in the UFO field. Like,
What's the quote? The Feynman quote? Anything not
Oh, yeah.
surrounded by uncertainty cannot be true.
that's right. In both physics and human affairs, anything that's not surrounded with uncertainty cannot be the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, if people aren't questioning it, it's not the truth.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're not questioning it, it's probably a lie because no one's questioned it. And you can't find out if it's not true or not.
Right.
All right, so got some more of these Bermuda Triangle stories from the Into the Bermuda Triangle by John Quasar. Okay, so possibly one of the most tragic disappearances in the Triangle happened to Flight 441 on October 30th, 1954. This was a huge Lockheed 4-engine Super Constellation airliner in military transport service, designated an R-7V-1. It was carrying 42 passengers, all of them family of U.S. Navy servicemen overseas. Everything indicates that the flight encountered nothing unusual. Its messages were routine from its base of Puxton River, NAS, Maryland, as far as Bermuda, where it would pass northward on its course to Lajes, Azores, where it was subsequently determined to have inexplicably disappeared by lack of radio messages thereafter. Its cargo adds another peculiar aspect to the mystery. It was carrying 5 life rafts, 111 life jackets, 46 exposure suits, pillows, and 660 paper cups. An intensive search found no bodies, no parts of the plane or cabin paneling, nor any sign of its very, very floatable cargo.
Weird.
The final conclusion of the Naval Board of Inquiry perhaps best summarizes what can be said of any missing airplane in the Bermuda Triangle. Quote, "It is the opinion of the board that R-7V-1 Bruno 128441 did meet with a sudden and violent force that rendered the aircraft no longer airworthy and was thereby beyond the scope of human endeavor to control. The force that rendered the aircraft uncontrollable is unknown." Unquote.
Why do they think that?
What?
Because it
What they're saying is they don't know what it was. You know?
No, but I mean, why do they think that it encountered a force?
Oh, because the only thing they could assume was that it was destroyed, and it must have been a catastrophic destruction.
Okay.
Because it, like
Okay. I see.
yeah. Like the assumption
It wasn't like they saw the radar just like slow
Right.
down to
like what was that Hadouken that just went across the radar?
They're just assuming that something
Yeah.
did something crashed it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The assumption is if you don't find the plane in mostly whole or big chunks, and then if you don't find it in very tiny chunks floating all over the place, then something incredibly drastic had to happen to it to destroy it. So
Maybe it got hit by a bolide.
yeah, that could be totally possible. But I think
As a matter of fact, like
it'd be weird that only happens over the Bermuda Triangle, though.
I know, but now that I think about it, that's actually
That would definitely destroy a plane.
yeah. Like this could have happened multiple times where it's like it's flying in an area where it's far away from radar, far away
Yeah.
from all this stuff, and then like out over the ocean,
Yeah.
and this meteor comes in and just explodes and
Yeah.
just completely vaporizes the
Yeah, and it wouldn't
plane.
even have to explode anywhere near the plane. It could be the meteor could blow up. Like the one at Chelyabinsk was 25 miles above the surface when it exploded. That's really far. No plane goes that high. I mean, the
and
cruising
it,
altitude is like
it,
30.
like shattered windows and
yeah, because it
destroyed all kinds of
explodes and
stuff
then
on
this
the ground.
shockwave is like
yeah.
right.
So
Yeah.
the shockwave up in the air close to it.
Yeah. So if there's a plane there and that explosion happens and the plane they would never know. They're just flying along and some of this, shockwave, bam, it would destroy it.
Yeah.
So that could totally be. And there would be, so the other thing that he really,
Was there a government shutdown during that time?
can you ever say that the government of Bermuda is open?
Well, only the United States government. When they shut down, they were
yeah.
worried about not seeing
Right.
meteors.
That's right. So obviously they weren't watching for bolides. And maybe that's what happens. We should check for correlation between government shutdowns and disappearances in Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
clearly that's what's happening. Mystery solved. Okay, so here's another one. 5 months later, on May 27th, 1962, it's not actually 5 months later than the story I just read. A huge C-133 cargo master. So those are the enormous. You've seen the C-133s. You can drive tanks into them.
Yeah.
You know, they're huge planes. They don't look like they should fly, but they totally do.
Yeah.
Left over Delaware for the Azores again. Okay, so in this case, the bizarre nature of the disappearance was verified by radar. The pilot, James Allen Higgins. Whoa. That's like our name and then the name of the guy that we just interviewed in our cousin's.
Figgins.
Oh yeah, that's right. He's Figgins. That's right. Had just rogered, reaching 17,000 feet altitude. Okay, so minutes afterward, at precisely 9:25 a.m., the C-133 vanished from the scope. The search, concentrating in this area, at first found nothing, but eventually a nose wheel was found and retrieved. Examination of the tire by the FBI lab revealed minute particles of aluminum, steel, plywood, and paint chips embedded into the rubber of the wheel. Okay. A pathetic cross-section, molecularly speaking, of all that the cargo master had been, along with its 50,000 pounds of cargo, consisting of crates, boxes, bags, machinery, etc. So basically there was like a scattering of molecular particles that were embedded into the rubber of the wheel that was kind of a cross-section of makeup of the plane, yeah.
That's, bolide.
Right.
I mean, pretty much.
Yeah. The lab also found a quote-unquote magnetic particle, but added that, quote, no significance is attached to the presence of this very small magnetic particle, unquote. Although they admitted they didn't know exactly what it was. Tests also concluded that no explosive material was found on the wheel. This is just one case of a huge aircraft suddenly disintegrating for no apparent reason. As a final mystery, this C-133 was carrying 85,000 pounds of fuel, most of which had not been expended yet, but no oil slicks were located on the surface of the ocean.
Yeah, I think I solved the mystery, man.
It's bolides.
Yeah, it's all bolides.
The oil slick thing that's hard to explain though. Like a bolide shockwave would not necessarily blow up fuel in tanks, but so it should end up on the ocean as big oil slicks.
Yeah, unless it was like a big fireball nearby the plane.
No, yeah, if there's a big fireball nearby the plane, then there would be no oil slick. But there would be a big black cloud, right?
For a little while.
Yeah. Okay.
There's just like weird shit that happens in like catastrophic explosions and wrecks and stuff. Like I witnessed one wreck, a car wreck, where there's like a 20-foot embankment on the left of the road going up. It's like a cliffside. And there's a barbed wire fence on top running parallel with the road. And the car loses control and it starts cartwheeling, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's like...
You mean like front end to back end to front end? Yeah.
It must have been. I don't know. I didn't see it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I didn't see the wreck. I just saw where the car was.
You saw the aftermath. Okay.
Yeah, so I see the skid marks on the road.
Yeah.
And then I see like some bushes and shit and dirt on the it was like kind of a dirt embankment on the left. And there's areas on the dirt where obviously the car touched down.
Yeah.
But it's like a small area that it touched.
So like a corner?
Yeah, and it goes up the embankment. And then there's an area on the right side of the fence where you can see that it touched. And then the car is laying on the left side of the fence. Facing the other direction, like, the direction the car was coming from. And there's a little hole in the top of the car, and there's a bent T-post. The T-post is like slightly bent, and there's like a little hole in the top of the car where it's like it poked a hole in the car.
Yeah, the car totally did a handstand on the T-post going over it.
Trunk is closed, hood is closed, but the battery of the car is like way up the road. Like where the car came from, way up there.
Oh, okay.
The spare tire from the trunk is way down the road in the creek bed, past like all these oak trees.
In the direction the car was going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like this thing from the back of the car is way out in front of the car, and the thing from the front of the car is way behind the car. Yeah. And both trunk and hood are closed.
Yeah, they're both closed and latched.
Right. So they must have popped open while it was cartwheeling. Yeah.
And then
I don't know. Who knows?
And then closed again. And just, it's crazy.
Yeah. That's why it's interesting you watch those.
It's like the battery.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, how does the...
Watch those crash test dummy, where they crash the cars in various ways in extremely slow motion, and you see that shit happening. Like, things opening, stuff flying out of it, and then the thing closing again, and the shit's bouncing around and whacking the dummies on the head. You know, you're like, how did I get fucking a bruise on my tip? You know, because this thing flew out of the glove box, bounced off the dash, hit you in the head, and then like went off and down the road and back into somebody else's car.
Something else came out of the glove box.
Right.
It's crazy shit, dude.
So,
it's just
why are there Q-tips in my nose? Yeah. I mean, I got the guitar flew out of the back of the car when the wreck we were in and broke my ankle. Like it somehow went underneath the guy who was sitting in the back seat, Ty. It, like went underneath him because he was between me and the guitar, and then somehow ended up down in the footwell. Yeah, and I'm like, my ankle's cracked. Ow.
Yeah, and the guitar was broken in half.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. All right. The June 5th, 1965 disappearance of a C-119 flying boxcar contains more unexplained radio quirks that serve only to deepen the mystery surrounding it. This Air Force utility flight took off from Homestead Air Force Base south of Miami with 10 crew and headed towards its destination of Grand Turk Island, where it was to drop off engine parts for another C-119 that had lost an engine and had made an emergency landing the day before. Shortly after takeoff at 7:47 p.m., Major Louis Giantoli informed Miami that he was picking up the, quote, Yankee route at 9,000 feet altitude and would follow this air highway all the way to Grand Turk. Giantoli's last transmission at 10:03 p.m. was from the last check-in point on this route, designated Yankee 2, 200 miles from Grand Turk. What is strange is that he was not picked up by any local control, several of which ring the area, nor by any of the other aircraft flying in the vicinity, nor by Miami, which was expecting the call. He was picked up by New York, 1,300 miles away. So, in other words, he was picked up by New York stations, but not by all the radio stations that were near him, right? As if he was nearer to there than to the Bahamas. Then New York, in turn, informed Miami. When the boxcar failed to arrive in the next hour, a full, though fruitless search was launched. An examination of the weather provided no clue. Quote, after a thorough investigation of the synoptic situation and evaluation of numerous pilot debriefings, it has been determined that the weather between Yankee 2 and Grand Turk at the time and altitude that C-119 was in the area was VFR, which is visual flight rules with no apparent hazards. So, like, I'm thinking now about this magnetic stuff. Like, a lot of this sounds like this kind of weird transference is happening, at least with the frequency. You know, like somebody transmits and New York picks it up.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was thinking about going back to the Earth frequency vibrations and shit and earthquakes and all of that stuff. Like, whatever energy sources, and when I say that, I mean basically at the fundamental level, some vibration in some medium, whatever. It doesn't have to be in the air. It can be in the electromagnetic spectrum. But we know that there's billions of freaking galaxies and billions of galaxy clusters or whatever the fuck just out there, and quasars and pulsars and all this weird shit, and we're getting bombarded with signals from them. I mean, just look up in the sky. Okay, we're getting hit.
Yeah.
By
all those things you see in the sky are exploding.
Yeah, but they're like, the fact that we can see them is that they're transmitting a signal of the activity happening there.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They're fucking exploding.
We're getting vibrations from them that are basically like, they're signals of what's going on. So,
and it's full spectrum too. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can imagine that, like on Earth. Earth has all these resonant frequencies that. So if certain things are going on in the atmosphere, electromagnetic storms and all kinds of weird shit like that, things are happening on the sun that are, we're getting hit by coronal mass ejections, all this kind of shit that is just, it's ringing us like a bell in many different ways. And then you look at the way transduction works, like for radio or whatever, where you speak into a microphone and you transduce that sound wave vibration to moving, a piece of film, some thin film or whatever, vibrating it back and forth, which is causing a wire to move over a magnet,
which is turning it into
creating it into electromagnetic pulse. And then that electromagnetic pulse, we have found a way to transfer that to a different place, right? Using wires, or we could send it through the air, without
broadcast
wires,
it.
using radio frequency or whatever.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi, all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And then convert it back into the signal that it started as.
Yeah.
So it's not really a stretch to imagine that this can happen naturally.
Right.
That
That somebody may transmit with their radio, and somehow it gets converted and then conducted,
right,
and then changed again or whatever.
right, or it gets transduced into some other energy, or when you're looking at like the planet as a whole, like there's a couple of areas that are resonating in the same way, where they're the source of whatever's causing a disturbance is affecting two parts of the planet.
Yeah.
Right. So its source may be underground somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's the point of the source, but it's
Or it's
reverberating out to like two different areas of the planet. And so if you were to transmit within this area at a certain point, it could transduce that signal somewhere else.
Right.
And like we were talking about with fire, the heat waves getting in the way of sound,
Yeah.
there could be something going on between that's preventing like local areas from getting it, or there's some discontinuity.
Especially because if you think about it, like a lot of these, like none of the stories I've read so far, but there are plenty of ones where this kind of disappearance is also associated with the compass going wild. Like Columbus talked about it when he was sailing through this area. Like the compass was just useless. It was spinning. It would just spin.
Yeah.
And like he had to hide that from his crew because he knew that they would freak out if they saw that. Especially then they start seeing lights bounce up out of the ocean. He's like, nope, compass is working fine. Everything's good. That's probably a sign of land over there.
Yeah, I was gonna say one time I was I was using a pedal and I was detuning the guitar and I had it running through an amplifier.
A pedal? You mean like
I was using a couple of effects pedals.
Yeah.
And one of them was a chorus pedal, which causes a sort of a
phase.
Yeah, like a phase change, a doubling. And I had it going really slow, and I was like detuning the guitar. I was taking two notes, and like instead of having them tuned in harmony, where the wave, like the beats of the two frequencies are leveled out. Yeah. I was detuning it to get those beats to come out and like resonate really fast. It's kind of hard to explain. Anyway, and I had it cranked up really loud, and I was just messing with it, trying to hear. I was really listening to, trying to get a grasp on the physics of these detuned notes and what they do to each other.
Okay.
Like, does it resonate other notes, or does it do, what does it do?
Yeah.
Right. Pretty much. I'm just fucking experimenting. I'm just wanking. Right.
Yeah.
And while I was doing this, and I'm like getting all these crazy freaking I've got the distortion on, and it's feeding back, and it's doing all this shit, and I'm just like, just a constant note. I'm not strumming the guitar. It's just like, I'm just making all this crazy noise. And in the middle of this, I hear like about 2 or 3 feet to my left and up a little bit, almost clear as day, like a woman speaking like on a cell phone. Like she's talking. It was like a phone call. She's like talking to someone on a phone. Just for a few seconds, it's like blah 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 blah. I was like, holy shit! But it was like, it was literally
That's some Hutchinson shit, right?
It wasn't
there.
coming out of the amp. It was like over here.
Yeah.
Like it sounded like it was coming up and to my left. So I'm in a room, an enclosed area, and all of this sound is bouncing off the walls.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm getting, and it's just, again, I got this loud amplifier, and it's just cranked up, and I don't know. I was just like, holy shit! I think somehow like these vibrations
Snag
like
that radio signal.
transduced this fucking radio signal. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that even possible?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, like,
how fucking weird.
How do people's fillings or metal plates in their heads actually produce sound when there's no mechanism for them to decode it? It's not like encrypted, but it is kind of, because they're using a particular kind of
carrier wave.
Yeah. And yet this metal plate in this guy's head is like, starts playing the radio commercials and shit. So how is that happening?
Now, anyone who's used guitar amps before, like when you put on the distortion channel, a very high gain channel, sometimes you will pick up radio stations, and usually if you're in Texas, they're like Mexican radio stations. So it's like always Tejana. And I think that might have to do with because they use AM and they use like a much higher amplitude than is allowed by the FCC here. So we'll pick up their radios. They have much more powerful transmissions or whatever. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's kind of what I've heard. Anyway, it's kind of a common thing with like tube guitar amps, like really high gain, and maybe not just tube, but it could be solid state amps too. But
you're picking up radio.
Yeah, they'll pick up, like you'll hear it like when you have the volume turned up real loud and you're not playing. It's like you'll just hear like. It was like, okay, man, can you put a sound gate on that? Like when we record in the studio?
Yeah, can you turn that off?
You know, you could get real creative and use it, but then you might get busted.
Yeah, right. Yeah, copyright violation.
It's not my fault, man. It was coming out of my amp.
Yeah, the backs of the amps will say like these devices must accept any kind of interference that happens to them, right? Yeah, usually because there's.
But yeah, that's probably more. You've got massive electromagnetic coils in there, and they're just picking up radio signals. So I don't understand. I know it wasn't that.
Yeah.
That I heard.
Yeah, because you were hearing it like.
Yeah, it was like in the air, right up here to the left and above my head, and I've never heard anything like that before or after that time, and I couldn't recreate it either.
Wow.
So
what did they say? You couldn't understand?
No, I could, but I can't remember what it was. It was only a few seconds of just talking, but it was clear.
Yeah. Okay. So
it was just like
understand it.
It was like blah 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 blah, like some woman just talking just for like a few words.
You're like, nope.
I was like, holy shit. But see, I was in the middle of changing. Like I was saying, I was like detuning and shit. Yeah, I was up at the top.
Yeah.
I was in the music room up at the top.
Yeah, you were like, dude.
Like, holy shit, I just did some crazy shit with
that's some Hutchison shit. That's Hutchison shit right there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
and you know what? Okay, here's a viable explanation, minus the fact that it seemed to be coming from this particular spot in the room, which could have had to do with just my ear and cymatic.
But you never recreated it.
No, but my point is that the position that I heard it from could have been due to just the position I was sitting in the room. Like, you know how that is. Like, we have this bell, and you hit the bell, and you walk around it, and you'll hear one note over here, and then you move a quarter of the way around, you hear the other note.
Yeah.
So it could have been something like that.
Or if you just hit it and stand still, it sounds like the bell is, if you're like, close your eyes, it sounds like the bell's moving.
Yeah.
Like back and forth.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was my point. But as to picking up a cell signal, it could have had to do with the actual electrical pickups on the guitar and the strings vibrating over them.
Could have been landline too, like landline unencrypted. You just were like getting it from phone lines going overhead or something.
I don't know. There's no phone.
Because cell phones are like digital encrypted. That would be really strange. If you got that. But like analog amp tubes and all that stuff could totally snag.
Maybe it was a call on a radio show.
Could be that.
It could have been that, and it could have been, you know, what my point was is it could have had to do with like the electromagnetic pickups on the guitar and the strings moving over them in a specific way that basically like filtered out the carrier wave.
Yeah.
So somehow with this complex waveform that I was making, I filtered out the carrier wave of some transmission. Right. And it could have been an electromagnetic transmission, a radio transmission that was picked up by the pickups of the guitar with this specific frequency, because when the metal string is moving over those electromagnets. Yeah.
Maybe that was canceling the carrier.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Like that could have canceled out the carrier wave, and then I heard this voice.
Coming through there in the clear, yeah.
Yeah. And it was a testimonial from some like Viagra commercial or some shit.
We have crazy electrical storms here sometimes. And one time the show observer Brett was up at the top with me we were up at the tower. So this is like in the back of the property, we built a family homestead on the highest point we could find. I think it's like 1,600 feet above sea level, right? 1,700 feet above sea level. So it's one of the highest points of the county, not the highest, but one of the highest points. And it's like a limestone hill, okay? Just like everything here around here is limestone hills. Now, we've had problems at this house before of like lightning will strike, not the house, it'll strike somewhere nearby, like the hill next to us or whatever. And then somehow that will end up blowing out our low voltage stuff in the house, right? And my idea was that because of the particular construction of the house, the lightning can go through the rock of the hill and end up in the lathe of the walls, because we did stucco. So there's metal lathe behind the stucco. So like, and then if you take your low voltage thing, like your thermostat, and you kind of screw it in with some metal screws, and then like the lightning hits the hill and it goes up through the lathe and gets, you know.
But it also ionizes a lot of the air.
Yes, it does.
Like so if you have a close lightning strike, you can have all kinds of weird shit happen with low voltage stuff just because of that. Like it's
absolutely.
induction almost, right?
Yep, absolutely. So, but this particular time, Brett was up there and we were up on the deck, which is like the sort of the second story of the main house. So it's the tower, and he was trying to connect to the Wi-Fi that we have there, which at the time was completely turned off and unplugged because there was a giant lightning storm, right? So, because my dad is like, he's pretty serious about unplugging everything when there's a lightning storm because low voltage stuff gets blown in the house all the time, right? So he had unplugged everything, so there was no Wi-Fi. But Brett was like, so what's the Wi-Fi here? And he shows me his phone, and the Wi-Fi, like his phone's, you know, got the standard, like it's got the list of what it's picking up, and it's picking up polypeak Wi-Fi.
That's crazy.
Which is miles and miles and miles and miles and miles away from us, right? And it was very brief. You know, once the lightning storm was gone, no more did we pick up polypeak Wi-Fi. But for like a little period there, during this crazy freaking electrical lightning storm, somehow the very, you know, like Wi-Fi signals are like 100 feet in radius. You know, they're just not very far. But like this hill is, I don't know how far away by the crow flies, but
I don't know.
It's not close.
A ways away, yeah.
Yeah. And somehow there's a Wi-Fi signal on that or near that hill called polypeak Wi-Fi that his phone was picking up with like 3 bars or something like that. You know?
Holy shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like, you know, Nikola Tesla had been working on this wireless power system, and the thinking behind it was that there's levels in our atmosphere up high enough that are made of certain gases that are more conductive than the gases down here in the thicker layers, and that once you get a powerful enough electrical current into that gas, it will ionize the gas, and then it will become ridiculously conductive.
Right.
And he tested this with a big tube that he had specially made, and it was 50 feet long, and he filled it with the gas that was basically the same makeup as the layer that was his target layer to ionize. And his plan was to ionize the entire layer that went all the way around the globe.
Right.
And he had calculated how much voltage it was going to take, and this experiment was part of proving that process. So he fills the tube, and so he has what is it? One pole at one side of the tube and the other pole at the other side of the tube.
Yeah.
And he charges one side, and it took a little while. It took like, I don't know, seconds or minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
And it eventually ionized the whole thing, and I think the initial amperage level that it required to ionize it was really high.
Yeah. But after that,
then after it ionized it, he could lower it way down, and it was just bam. It was a perfect conductor.
Right.
And he was able to run electricity through the empty, just
quote
the
unquote
gas.
empty tube. Yeah.
Yeah. Quote unquote empty tube. And that's how he kind of figured out like what it was going to take to
do this to the whole planet.
To the whole planet. Yeah. And everybody's like, bullshit. But here you are, like, there's an electrical storm happening, and probably, you know how the lightning will strike across clouds.
Yes.
And it's doing the same thing at whatever level that's happening at. It's ionizing that area and making it more conductive.
Yes.
So like the first lightning strike, in the clouds is probably a much higher voltage than the mini strikes after that.
Right. Yeah. There's a threshold which voltage has to reach before the lightning can happen. But after that first one goes, then there's shitloads of lightning after that
Right.
because it's a lot easier. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
So I don't know. That's plausible to me that however that was happening, their Wi-Fi signal was able to. And now maybe this isn't the same with conducting electricity, but something was going on that was making that Wi-Fi signal like with literally like little to no barriers.
Right. I mean, like, I think that because we're really close to, because Poly Peak is the highest point in the county, right? That's the highest spot. So we're really close to it, and so I think that we're kind of at the same layer.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So we were like sitting, like when we're in the tower, we're basically at Poly Peak height, and so like probably if we'd have gone down the hill,
Yeah, I gotcha.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were in the same layer of atmosphere as Poly Peak.
Yeah,
So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, you know, if you look at, just as an aside, if you look at why people think that Tesla's wireless system won't work, is because they're talking about broadcast. Well, if you broadcast power, you lose too. The losses are too great. I'm like, yeah, but he was talking about conducting, not broadcasting.
Oh, they're talking about induction? Because like the way they use wireless power now is basically induction.
Right.
Which, yeah, that's using the electromagnetic field.
Right. Like the pin for my tablet. Like one day, years and years after I had it, I realized, like, do I need to change the batteries in this thing, this pin? And like I couldn't find any place where the batteries went, and I eventually realized that the Cintiq company, like this is their signature thing. Their tablets have a little floating sort of envelope of field over top of it that powers the pin. You never have to change batteries. It's badass. Time's up, snakes.
So wait, yeah, but what was your? Yeah, I know the big sign has just come up and
Yeah.
slapped us in the face.
Yeah. Your time is up, snakes.
Okay, so I'm not sure I like this because I kind of liked it that when I knew the time was up, I would just kind of start looking at you
Yeah.
in this weird way, and then you were like,
What? Are we out of time?
But it allowed us to kind of finish the point.
Yeah. What were you?
You were saying something about like Nikola Tesla was not talking about broadcasting. He was talking
Right.
about conducting.
When a lot of the debunks I've seen of, where people are like, well, this proves that Nikola Tesla's, wireless power wouldn't work or whatever. They're talking about broadcasting. I'm like, dude, he wasn't talking about broadcasting power. And they're like, well, he had a big antenna and blah, blah, blah. No. He was talking about conducting it directly to the atmosphere. Well, the atmosphere, like, well, okay, the layers right above the ground are terrible for conducting because they have a lot of moisture. For one
So
thing.
basically, what he was going to do is turn this layer of the atmosphere into a conductor, and then have it charged, right? So you have a power plant somewhere, like we go back to a waterfall, and we're like, oh, how do we use the power of this falling water? Well, we fucking spin magnets next to electrical wires and shit, and then he takes all that power of the falling water.
First, we throw all the scriptards into it.
Yeah.
That's
and it helps the turbines.
that's right. It
get
helps the
going.
turbines spin.
We take all that power that we're getting from the falling water, and then you conduct it up into this tower that reaches into this, up on a mountain in Colorado. The tower reaches up to that layer of the atmosphere, the target layer, and he used this special type of coil to rate, and it was all based on harmonics and resonance, the amplification of the electricity, and he was reaching ridiculous voltage, and
And he was also not
cycles.
he was also not restricted to the 60 cycle. He had like oscillators that would basically change the frequency of the alternation. Like, I mean, he talked about reaching hundreds of thousands, and I guess later when you get a spark gap oscillator, you can do millions.
Well, he was
But he was
now
using
we have
mechanical
diodes
ones that
do
would
it.
fly apart. And he would bitch about it.
But he eventually found a way to get this ridiculously high frequency alternating current and voltage levels that were up in the millions of volts.
Right, which
And-
makes him completely harmless to people.
And he was going to basically electrify this layer of gas in the atmosphere. So in order to get, basically that layer of atmosphere became the conductor. So imagine it as like the wire on the telephone pole spreads out into a massive sphere that covers the entire globe.
Right,
And so you don't look at the wire on the telephone pole and be like, okay, now it's at my house, I can turn on my TV. No, you have to go attach something to that wire, bring it down the pole, bury it underground, and then come up into your house and put a plug in your wall. So it was the same deal. Like where you wanted to get the power, there would probably be another station that would have a tower that would receive the power, and then with wires it would go out and go into the other things in your house.
Right.
It was not,
and it could
broadcast power.
Right. It wasn't broadcast. It could possibly power planes.
Yeah, and lights. Like one of his ideas was
to use just light the layer up.
One of his ideas was that you could light portions of the sky up, like over cities.
Yeah, like a whole giant fluorescent,
like a massive fluorescent.
I would
bulb.
hate that.
That's fucking badass. It's so badass
Yeah,
though.
it's like the white, like we're all in an office cubicle, giant city, freaking fluorescent lights.
Yeah, but think about like the problems that would solve. Okay, we gotta. Time is up, snakes.
Think about where the bugs would go.
They would go way up there.
Yeah, they'd be like. You had falling bugs that are dead, like all frozen falling bugs.
Think about where the snakes would go.
Snakes would go after the bugs.
They would go into caves.
Smooth.